"Look at what you've done again, you this useless pig!" screamed Madame Esther at the top of her voice. Next thing was a slap so deafening that it caught the attention of everyone in the hall. The sound echoed through the high-ceilinged banquet room like a whip cracking against metal. Chioma's head snapped to the side, her eyes stinging, her cheek instantly burning hot. For a moment, the tray she had been holding dangled uselessly in her trembling hands. But then it slid down, clattering against the polished floor. The plates and bowls it carried shattered into sharp pieces, scattering peppered snails, jollof rice, and fried meat all over the white marble tiles. The music stopped. The saxophonist froze mid-note. Conversations died instantly. All eyes turned toward the scene in the center of the hall. A man in a black suit at the nearest table looked away uncomfortably. A pair of young women by the buffet counter giggled behind their hands. Across the room, an older woman frowned and muttered to her friend, "Ah, this one too much now." But the friend just shrugged and kept watching with open curiosity. Esther Williams stood tall in her emerald gown, her left hand still half-raised from the slap, her diamond earrings swinging with the movement. She leaned in toward Chioma, her voice sharp and dripping with contempt. "Do you know how much this food cost? Do you know who is in this hall tonight? You think we brought you from that bush you call a village just to disgrace us like this?" Chioma blinked quickly, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. She bent down without a word, trying to pick up the broken plates. Her fingers shook as she picked up one large piece, but Esther's voice struck her again, louder this time. "Don't even touch that. You will cut your dirty hands and stain the floor with your blood. Useless girl." A ripple of laughter came from somewhere to Chioma's left. She could feel the heat of eyes on her back, every gaze like a needle pressing into her skin. From the far side of the hall, William Williams was leaning casually against a tall wine table, a glass of champagne in his hand. He didn't move to intervene. In fact, a small smirk tugged at the corners of his mouth as he whispered something to the man beside him, who chuckled in response. Esther stepped even closer, lowering her voice to a hiss only a few people nearby could hear, though her expression still radiated fury for all to see. "You better be grateful I don't send you packing tonight. If not for the fact that I don't want to embarrass myself further in front of these people, you would be sleeping outside like the animal you are." Chioma swallowed hard and crouched down again, reaching for another piece of plate. This time Esther didn't stop her. The guests began to murmur quietly among themselves, and the band slowly picked up the music again, though the tension in the room lingered like smoke. A middle-aged man in a gray agbada, seated near the scene, shook his head and muttered, "Some people forget these maids are human beings." His wife quickly nudged him under the table to be quiet. One of the younger female guests called out mockingly, "Madame Esther, please take it easy now. Oh, she's just a small girl." Her tone was playful, but her smile was wide, enjoying the drama. Esther gave a short laugh that wasn't warm at all. "Small girl that wants to serve food to senators like she's in a buka? I told her to watch her steps. She's not deaf." The humiliation sank deep into Chioma's bones. Every movement she made to gather the shards felt heavier than the last. She could hear whispers from across the room. "See the way she's shaking. Maybe she's drunk. She probably can't even spell her own name." One sharp piece of plate nicked her finger, and she winced, but she didn't stop. She picked up the last fragment and placed it carefully on the broken tray. Her knees ached from crouching, but she forced herself to stand, head bowed. Esther snapped her fingers toward the kitchen. "Carry that mess out of my sight, and when you're done, come back and mop this place before someone slips. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Ma," Chioma murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "What? Speak like a human being," Esther barked. "Yes, Ma," Chioma said again, louder this time, though her throat felt tight. She turned and began walking toward the kitchen, holding the broken tray against her chest. The sound of soft laughter followed her, mixed with the clinking of glasses and the band trying to fill the air with music again. Inside the kitchen, the bright lights felt harsher. She set the tray down on the counter and let out a slow breath, trying to steady her heartbeat. She washed her hands quickly, scrubbing away the smear of sauce and the tiny bead of blood on her finger. A younger waiter named Sunday glanced at her from the other side of the counter. "Chioma, you okay?" he asked quietly. She forced a small nod. "I'm fine." Sunday shook his head. "That woman, I don't know how you manage. If it was me, I would have left since." Chioma gave a faint smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Some things, you just have to bear." She didn't explain further. Sunday hesitated, then went back to arranging a tray of drinks. Chioma picked up a mop and a small bucket of soapy water. She walked back out into the hall, keeping her gaze low as she cleaned the mess in the same spot where everyone had watched her fall apart minutes earlier. Esther passed by once more, her perfume strong, and muttered just loud enough for Chioma to hear. "If you spoil anything again tonight, you will regret ever stepping into this house." Chioma kept her head down and said nothing. When the floor was spotless again, she returned to the kitchen, the sound of the party still lively behind her. She stood in the corner for a moment, gripping the mop handle tightly. Her cheek still throbbed from the slap. She could hear the faint echo of Esther's voice in her ears. The humiliation was raw, like a fresh wound. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing slowly. This wasn't the first time she'd been treated like this here, and she knew it wouldn't be the last. But there was a reason she was still here. A reason she couldn't let herself forget, no matter how much it hurt. That reason, she would keep it locked deep inside her for now. The house was too quiet. It was the kind of silence that made every sound louder. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen, the ticking clock on the wall, the faint creak of wood in the ceiling. Chioma sat on the small wooden chair in the corner of the boys' quarters, folding her uniform for the next day. The air smelled faintly of bleach from all the cleaning they had done earlier. She had been replaying the events of the banquet in her head all evening. The slap, the stares, the whispers. She pushed the thoughts away and focused on arranging her clothes neatly. A soft knock came at her door. She froze. Nobody knocked at this hour. The other staff were either asleep or still in their own rooms. The knock came again, slower this time. "Chioma?" It was William's voice, low and calm, but it carried something that made the hair on her arms stand up. She stayed silent, hoping he would think she was asleep. "I know you're in there," he said, his tone smooth. "Open the door. I just want to talk." Her chest tightened. She glanced at the small bolt on her door. It was locked, but she had seen William open locks with a spare key before. "I'm tired, sir," she said through the door, keeping her voice even. "We can talk in the morning." There was a pause, then a slow chuckle. "Morning is too far. Open the door, Chioma." She swallowed hard. "Please, sir. It's late." He didn't leave. Instead, his voice dropped lower. "You know, most girls in your position, they understand what it takes to keep their jobs." Her stomach turned. "I'm a good employer when I want to be," he continued. "I can make life very easy for you, but I can also make it very hard." Chioma gripped the edge of the chair so tight her knuckles whitened. "I don't understand, sir." "You do," he said simply. "Open the door." She stood slowly, moving toward the door, but instead of unlocking it, she spoke firmly. "Sir, please, I respect you, but I can't do this." There was silence on the other side for a few seconds. Then a soft, deliberate sigh. "You think you're better than the rest," William said. His tone had changed, no more fake sweetness. "You think because you can speak small English, you're special. Don't forget where I found you." She didn't answer. "I'll remember this," he said finally, and his footsteps moved away. Chioma waited, listening to his steps fade down the corridor. When she was sure he was gone, she locked the bolt tighter and sat back on the chair. Her hands were trembling, but she took slow breaths until they steadied. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, the smell of frying plantain and eggs drifted into Chioma's room as the first light of day crept through the small window. She dressed quickly, wanting to be out before Esther woke. But luck wasn't on her side. As she stepped into the main house with a tray of breakfast items for the dining table, Esther's voice rang out from the living room. "Chioma." "Yes, Ma," she said quickly, setting the tray down and walking toward her. Esther was seated on the sofa in a silk robe, scrolling through her phone. Her hair was perfectly tied, even though it was early. She didn't look up. "I heard you refused my husband last night." Chioma's stomach dropped. "Ma!" Esther looked up sharply. "Don't, Mummy. You think I don't know? He told me." "I didn't." "Shut up," Esther snapped, standing. "Do you think you are too good for him? Do you think you are better than me? Is that it?" "No, Ma. You are just a maid," Esther cut in. "A maid I feed. A maid I allow to sleep under my roof. And you have the audacity to act like you are a queen." Chioma lowered her eyes. "I'm sorry, Ma." "You will be sorry," Esther said coldly. "From today, you will double your chores. And you will not eat until I say so. Maybe hunger will teach you respect." "Yes, Ma," Chioma murmured. Esther smirked. "And let this be the last time you embarrass me in my own home." Chioma nodded once and walked back to the kitchen. She didn't touch her breakfast that morning. From then until midday, Esther found every reason to call her out. "Chioma, this floor is not shining enough." "Chioma, are you deaf? I said bring me my tea now." "Chioma, why are you moving so slow? Do you think time waits for you?" Each order came like a slap, but Chioma obeyed them all. She kept her face blank, her voice calm, and her steps steady. By afternoon, her legs ached from running up and down the stairs. Her hands were dry from washing plates over and over. She carried laundry to the clothesline while the sun burned her shoulders, but she didn't stop. Sunday caught her near the pantry and whispered, "What did you do to Madam today? She's on your case." "Nothing," Chioma said simply. He frowned. "Then be careful. She looks like she's ready to bite someone's head off." Chioma managed a small smile. "I'm fine." But inside, she knew she had to keep her guard up. William's late-night visit wasn't the end of it. It was the beginning. By evening, she had cleaned every room twice, polished the silverware, and helped Mama Kay prepare dinner. Her body screamed for rest, but she kept moving. When she finally retreated to her small room, she sat on her bed in the dim light, listening to the muffled voices of William and Esther arguing upstairs. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was sharp. She lay down, closing her eyes. The day had been long, but she reminded herself. She had endured worse, and for now she had to endure this too. The rain was loud against the thin roof of the boys' quarters. Chioma sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the small metal bucket she had placed in the corner to catch the drip from a leaky patch. The water plinked steadily inside, slow, even drops. Her hands were clasped in her lap, and her mind felt heavier than her body. It had been 2 days since William's late-night visit. 2 days since Esther doubled her chores. She had kept her head down, done every task without complaint, and avoided being alone in any part of the house where William might drop by. But she knew it was only a matter of time before something else happened. A soft knock came at her door. She tensed, the sound was too familiar. But when she opened it, it was Sunday, standing in the rain with his hoodie pulled over his head. "I brought you some bread," he said, lifting a small nylon bag. "Mama Kay said you didn't eat much today." "Thank you," she said quietly, taking it from him. He nodded and glanced inside her small room. "This roof is leaking." "It's fine," she replied. "No, it's not fine," Sunday said, stepping inside a little. "If Madam sees it, she will say you damaged the place." "She won't come here," Chioma said. Sunday frowned. "Chioma, are you okay?" She forced a small smile. "I'm fine." He looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. "All right, see you tomorrow." When he left, Chioma sat back on the bed and opened the nylon. The bread was soft and warm. She took a small bite, chewing slowly. Her mind wandered. She had been carrying this secret for weeks now. A secret that none of the staff in this house would even imagine. To them, she was just the quiet new maid from a small village. But that wasn't the truth. She looked at the rain sliding down the small window and let her thoughts drift backward, to the world she had left behind. 2 months ago, Ondo State. The salty breeze from the Atlantic swept over the wide veranda of the Kalu estate. The house was 3 stories of white-painted walls, surrounded by green cocoa fields that stretched far into the horizon. Inside, the air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh flowers. Chioma stood by the balcony railing, watching the workers in the distance harvesting cocoa pods. Her phone buzzed in her hand, a message from her lawyer in Lagos. "We need to talk. Urgent." She turned as a voice called from inside. "Chioma, your tea is getting cold." Her mother, Ngozi Kalu, stood in the doorway. A graceful woman in her late 50s. She carried herself like someone used to both power and respect. Her life had been split between running the Kalu cocoa empire and running her charity, a foundation that funded schools, orphanages, and hospitals in rural communities. Chioma smiled faintly. "I'll be right there, Mama." They sat together at the large dining table, teacups steaming between them. Her mother was talking about an upcoming trip to Abuja to meet with some government officials about expanding the charity's reach. "You must understand," her mother was saying, "this work is not just about money. It is about trust. People give to us because they know we will use it well." "I know, Mama," Chioma said. Ngozi reached across the table and touched her hand. "One day this will be yours to run. And when that time comes, you must protect it with everything you have." Chioma nodded. She didn't know then how soon those words would matter. 3 weeks later. The funeral was quiet but heavy. The air smelled of rain and fresh earth. Chioma stood beside her father, who was too weak to speak, as they lowered her mother's coffin into the ground. It had happened so suddenly, an illness that took her in less than a week. The doctors called it an infection. Chioma wasn't so sure. After the burial, she stayed behind at the graveside while everyone else went back to the house. She placed her hand on the damp soil and whispered, "I'll protect it, Mama. I promise." 1 month later, charity office, Lagos. The accountant, Mr. Tund, closed the office door and lowered his voice. "Miss Chioma, I've been going through the books, and something is wrong." "What do you mean?" she asked. "Large sums have been leaving the charity's accounts. Not once or twice. Every month since your mother passed." "How large?" "Millions," he said simply. "Transferred to shell companies. Accounts that don't exist in our official records." Chioma's heart pounded. Who has access to make those transfers? "Only the Lagos branch manager and a few people in the upper circle." He hesitated. "Miss Chioma, one of the names that keeps appearing in the trail is William Williams." She frowned. "Who is that?" "A businessman, very connected in Lagos society. He and his wife run their own foundation. But if you ask me, it's just a cover. They've been linked to other irregularities." She sat back, processing the information. "If I confront them, they'll cover their tracks." Tund nodded. "Exactly. You need proof. Solid proof." 1 week later, Kalu Estate. Chioma sat with her family lawyer, Mr. Daramola, in her father's study. He was flipping through a file of documents. "This is serious, Chioma," he said. "If these people are stealing from your mother's charity, we can take them to court. But we can't go in blind." "I need to know how they're doing it," she said. "And I need evidence." He looked at her for a long moment. "What are you thinking? That they won't hide anything from someone they think is beneath them," she said. "If I work for them, I can see everything up close." "You? Work for them?" "As a maid," she said simply. "I'll use a different name. Dress simply. No one will suspect anything." The lawyer hesitated. "It's risky." "I can handle it," she said firmly. "I'm not going there to fight them. I'm going there to watch." He nodded slowly. "If you're sure, I'll be ready to act when you have enough." Present-day Williams House, Lagos. The rain had stopped outside. Chioma blinked, pulling herself back into the present. She glanced at the small clock on her wall. The household was quiet. Esther and William had gone out for the evening. The other staff were either in their rooms or asleep. She stood and walked to the small mirror above her wash basin. The face that looked back at her wasn't the one people in this house thought they knew. They saw a poor maid. They didn't see the daughter of Ngozi Kalu. They didn't see the heiress to one of the largest cocoa empires in the country. They didn't see the woman who had sworn at her mother's grave to protect the charity from vultures. She leaned closer to the mirror. "They don't know who they're dealing with," she whispered. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the plan. It had been weeks since she started working here, and she already had small pieces of the puzzle. Overheard conversations, suspicious phone calls, glances at documents when no one was looking. But she needed more. She needed something that couldn't be denied. She needed to get into William's home office. The next morning, Esther was in a foul mood at breakfast. She complained about the weather, about the tea being too light, about the paper being full of lies. "Chioma," she barked. "Hurry up with my toast. You're moving like a snail." "Yes, Ma," Chioma replied, placing the toast on the table. Esther waved her away. "Go and polish the silver in the dining cabinet. I want to see my face in it when you're done." Chioma obeyed. As she polished, she caught sight of William walking past toward his office. The door was slightly ajar before he closed it behind him. She made a mental note. Later that day, she overheard him in the living room, speaking on the phone. "Yes, the money will be there before Friday," he was saying. "Don't worry about the source. Just make sure it's cleaned before it comes back to me." She kept her head down, dusting the shelves as if she wasn't listening. That night, alone in her small room, she opened a notebook and wrote down everything she had heard. Every detail mattered. She closed the book and slid it under her mattress. This was just the beginning. "Chioma, what is this nonsense?" Esther's voice exploded through the dining room. Chioma froze, the silver tray still in her hands. Guests had started arriving for the Williams' small but high-profile political dinner. She had just finished setting a table when Esther stormed in, her heels clapping hard against the polished floor. "This is how you set a table for important people?" Esther barked, pointing at the arrangement. "The fork is on the wrong side. Are you trying to disgrace me again?" Chioma quickly set the tray down. "I'm sorry, Ma. I will fix it now." "No, don't just fix it," Esther snapped. "Fix it while they are watching. Let them see the kind of staff I have to manage." Heads turned at nearby tables. A senator's wife raised her eyebrows. A young man in a navy blue suit smirked into his wine glass. Chioma adjusted the cutlery quietly, feeling the weight of every eye on her. Her fingers moved steadily, but inside her chest, her heart was pounding. Not like that," Esther interrupted loudly. "You hold the fork like this." She snatched it from Chioma's hand and demonstrated with exaggerated movements, her voice dripping with mockery. "Even a child in primary school can learn this." Someone at one of the tables chuckled. Chioma heard the sound clearly. It felt like it echoed in her ears. When she finished correcting the table, Esther gestured toward the floor. "Now, get on your knees and clean that spot before it stains. You missed it earlier." Chioma's eyes flickered to where Esther was pointing, a small drop of sauce on the marble. "Yes, Ma," she said, kneeling. Esther stepped aside, allowing more guests to see. "You people should forgive her," she told them, her tone fake sweet. "She's still learning, but she will get there." From where she was kneeling, Chioma could hear bits of conversation around her. "Is she new?" someone asked. "Yes," another voice replied. "I saw her last week. She's slow. She looks like she's from far inside the village," a woman added, as if Chioma couldn't hear. Chioma kept wiping the spot, her head down. She could feel heat rising in her face, but her voice stayed silent. Later that evening, the guests were settled, eating and talking. Chioma moved between tables, serving wine and clearing plates. William was in his element, laughing loudly, slapping backs and talking politics. She passed behind him as he leaned toward a man in a gray agbada. "These donors are easy," William was saying, his voice lowered but not low enough. "You just give them a nice speech and a small report, and they will open their wallets. The rest, well, you know." The man chuckled. "That's why I like you, William. You understand the game." Chioma didn't react, but she kept the words in her mind. storing them away like pieces of a puzzle. An hour later, Esther decided to make dessert service a show. She instructed Chioma to carry the heavy tray of cakes into the center of the dining room while everyone was watching. "Be careful this time," Esther said loudly, smirking. "Or should I carry it for you?" Chioma lifted the tray and walked slowly, her eyes fixed on the table ahead. But just as she reached the center of the room, someone's chair scraped back unexpectedly. She sidestepped quickly to avoid hitting it, and one of the plates on the tray rattled. Gasps went up. "Ah, don't drop it, oh!" A man at the corner table shouted jokingly. "Steady, steady," another guest teased. Chioma placed the tray down safely, but the laughter lingered. Esther clapped her hands once. Finally, she does something right. Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. A few guests laughed again. Chioma didn't look at any of them. She served the cakes in silence and left the room as soon as she was done. In the kitchen, Sunday was waiting near the sink. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," Chioma said, but her voice was flat. Sunday frowned. "The way Madam talks to you, it's too much." Chioma shook her head. "It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Every insult, every public humiliation was pushing her closer to the edge. She knew she couldn't react. Not yet. Not until she had what she needed. Later that night, the dinner was finally over. The guests left one by one, their drivers pulling up to the entrance. Esther stood at the door, smiling and waving as if she hadn't spent the evening tearing Chioma down. William was beside her, shaking hands and making promises. Chioma cleared the last table, her mind replaying the bits of conversation she had overheard. When she passed by the entrance to the hall, she heard William speaking to Esther in a low voice. "We should move that money out by Thursday. If the auditors come, there should be nothing here." Esther nodded. "I'll talk to Bayo. He knows what to do." Chioma didn't break stride, but inside, her pulse quickened. That was the second time she'd heard William talk about moving money. She needed to find proof soon. Back in her room, she sat on her bed, her notebook open. She wrote down everything. The guests' names, the overheard conversations, the way William spoke about donors, and now the mention of moving money. She tapped the pen against the paper, thinking. Getting into William's office was risky, but she couldn't wait much longer. If he moved the money out, she might lose her chance. She closed the notebook and slid it under her mattress. Tomorrow, she decided. She would find a way in tomorrow. The house was almost silent when Chioma made her move. It was late past 11 p.m. The television in the living room was still on, playing low, but she could tell from the faint sound of snoring that William had fallen asleep there again. Esther's bedroom door upstairs was closed. She stepped quietly out of the boys' quarters and into the main house, her bare feet making no sound on the tiles. Her eyes went straight to William's office, the one door that was always locked when he wasn't inside. Tonight, the key was in her pocket. She had seen him drop it earlier in the kitchen by mistake. When she picked it up to hand it over, he had waved dismissively. "Leave it there, I'll get it later." He never came back for it. Now it was in her hand. She slipped it into the lock and turned it slowly. A faint click sounded. She paused, listening. Nothing. Pushing the door open, she stepped inside. The office. The room smelled faintly of leather and expensive cologne. A large wooden desk sat near the center, covered in neat stacks of papers. The walls were lined with dark shelves, filled with books, files, and small gold-framed awards. Chioma's eyes scanned the desk. She knew she didn't have long, maybe 10 minutes before someone moved. She began with the top drawer. Pens, a stapler, nothing important. The second drawer held unopened envelopes, some marked confidential. She pulled them out quickly, flipping through until she found one with the logo of her mother's charity. Her stomach tightened. She opened it carefully. Inside was a bank transfer receipt. Millions of naira sent from the charity's account to a company she didn't recognize. She set it aside and opened another envelope. This one contained a printed email chain. She read quickly. Funds will be moved to the Shell account this week. Clean the ledger before the next report. The sender was someone named Bayo, the same name Esther had mentioned last night. She pulled out her small phone from her pocket and snapped quick photos of both documents. Suddenly, footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway. She froze. The steps grew closer. Quickly, she slid the papers back into place, closed the drawer, and moved toward the bookshelf, pretending to dust the top of it. The office door opened. William stood there, eyes narrowing slightly. "What are you doing here?" Chioma kept her face calm. "Sorry, sir. I saw dust on the shelves. I just wanted to clean it before morning." "At this time of night?" His voice was low. "I couldn't sleep," she said softly. He stared at her for a moment, then smirked. "You're lucky I'm in a good mood tonight." He stepped inside, brushing past her. "Go on then. Finish quickly." "Yes, sir," she said, keeping her hands steady as she wiped the shelf. After a few seconds, he waved her away. "That's enough. Go to bed." She walked out without looking back, her heartbeat loud in her ears. Back in her room, she locked her door and sat on her bed, breathing hard. The photos on her phone were clear. She zoomed in on the bank receipt. The date was only a week ago. The email was even more damning. She transferred the photos to a hidden memory card and slid it into a small cloth pouch she kept under her pillow. It was risky, but she knew she had to keep gathering more. The next day, at breakfast, Esther was in one of her talkative moods, bragging to a friend over the phone about a new charity event they were planning. "Of course, people will donate," Esther was saying. "They believe in the cause. And the more they believe, the more they give." She laughed. Yes, we'll make sure they see where the money is going. On paper, anyway." Chioma refilled her tea without a word, her mind recording every detail. Later, as she cleared the dishes, she passed by the living room and overheard William again, this time speaking to someone in person. "Listen, I don't want any noise," William said. "If the auditors call, tell them the funds went to school renovations. No one checks these things." The man he was talking to nodded quickly. "Understood." In the kitchen, Sunday caught her leaning against the counter. "You look tired," he said. "I'm fine," she replied. "Be careful," he warned. "Madam doesn't like when you look distracted." Chioma nodded. "I'll be fine." But she wasn't distracted, she was calculating. Every overheard word, every document, every slip from their mouths was a step closer to what she needed. She just had to stay invisible until the right moment. "Where is it?" Esther's voice tore through the living room like glass shattering on tile. Chioma froze halfway through dusting the cabinet. She turned slowly to see Esther standing in the doorway, her face twisted in anger, one hand clutching a gold bracelet. "This bracelet was in my drawer yesterday," Esther said, her voice rising. "Today it is not there. And guess who was cleaning my room yesterday?" Chioma's stomach dropped. "Ma, don't you dare talk." Esther cut her off, stepping closer. "You think I don't see you moving around this house like you own it? I feed you. I let you sleep here. And this is how you repay me." "I didn't take anything," Chioma said firmly but quietly. Esther laughed, a short, sharp sound. "Liar." She turned her head toward the staircase. "William." Heavy footsteps came down the stairs. William appeared, phone in hand, looking mildly annoyed. "What now?" "This girl," Esther said, pointing a finger at Chioma. "She's a thief. My bracelet is missing." William's eyebrows lifted. He looked at Chioma with slow disbelief. "Chioma, is this true?" "No, sir," Chioma replied. "I didn't take anything." "Then where is it?" Esther demanded. "I don't know, Ma." Esther's voice grew colder. "Search her things." Chioma's heart started to pound. "Ma, please, search her things." Esther snapped. The search. They marched to the boys' quarters. Esther pushed the door open before Chioma could even reach for the handle. She began pulling open drawers, tossing clothes onto the floor. William leaned against the doorframe, watching. "See how she hides them in here?" Esther muttered as she searched. Small thief. "I have nothing of yours," Chioma said, her voice tight. Esther pulled open the small cupboard and tossed more clothes aside. No bracelet. She dropped the last shirt and stood up. Humph. Maybe you were smart enough to hide it somewhere else, Esther said. But you will still leave this house today. What? Sunday's voice came from the doorway. He had just returned from the market, carrying a small bag of tomatoes. Madam, she didn't. Shut up, Esther barked. Before I send you out too. Sunday clenched his jaw but stepped back. Pack your things, Esther told Chioma. Everything. Now. Thrown out. Chioma folded her few belongings slowly, her hands steady even though her chest felt tight. She placed them into the small bag she had brought when she first came. Hurry, Esther snapped, standing over her. When Chioma zipped the bag, Esther grabbed it from her hands and marched outside into the yard. The afternoon sky was heavy with clouds, and a light drizzle was already falling. Esther flung the bag onto the wet ground. There. That's where you belong, she said coldly. Outside. William had followed them out, hands in his pockets. You're lucky we're not calling the police, he said. Chioma looked from one to the other, her face calm but her eyes steady. I didn't take your bracelet. Esther stepped forward until she was inches away. And I don't believe you. Get out. The rain. The drizzle turned into steady rain, soaking Chioma's bag within minutes. She stood there for a moment, then bent to pick it up. She didn't ask for shelter. She didn't beg to be let back in. Sunday appeared at the edge of the yard, holding an umbrella. He looked at her with concern but didn't dare come closer while Esther and William were still there. Go, Esther said, waving a dismissive hand. Before I change my mind. Chioma turned and walked slowly toward the gate. But instead of leaving, she paused just outside, under the cover of a tree. She could see the house clearly from there. She wasn't going yet. Not like this. That night. By evening, the rain had stopped. The house lights glowed warm in the dark. Chioma waited until she saw the main living room lights go off. Then she made her way quietly around the back of the property to the boys' quarters. Sunday met her there, his voice low. They think you've gone. I know, she said. Why did you stay? I'm not done here, she replied. He looked at her like he wanted to ask more, but she shook her head. It's better you don't know. The call. In her small room, she pulled out the hidden memory card from under her pillow. She slid it into her phone and selected the photos she had taken in William's office, the bank receipt, the emails. She dialed her lawyer's number. It's me, she said when he answered. I have enough now. You're sure? He asked. Yes, it's time. All right, he said. We'll move fast, but be careful. They'll be watching you now. I know, she said quietly. The plan. After the call, she lay back on her bed, listening to the distant sound of traffic from the main road. The events of the day replayed in her mind. Esther's accusations, William's cold smirk, her bag in the rain. They thought they had broken her. They thought she would walk away in shame. But they were wrong. Tomorrow she would take the next step. And soon they would see who she really was. Chioma, don't forget to stay where I told you. Her lawyer's voice echoed in her mind. It was the night of the Williamses' big charity gala. The hall was bigger than any event they had hosted before. A rented luxury venue with crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, and a red carpet at the entrance. Outside, expensive cars lined the street. Inside, photographers snapped pictures of guests in glittering dresses and tailored suits. Chioma stood near the back, wearing the same plain Maid uniform as always. She held a tray of drinks, moving quietly between tables. To everyone else, she was invisible. But tonight, invisibility was exactly what she needed, until it was time to step into the light. Before the event. That afternoon, she had met her lawyer briefly in a quiet cafe across town. She handed him a small envelope containing the printed photos and documents from William's office. This is enough to get them arrested, he said after scanning the first few pages. I don't want it to happen in private, Chioma replied. It has to be in front of everyone. In front of all the people who believe they are saints. Her lawyer nodded slowly. Then tonight is perfect. I've already spoken to the EFCC. They'll be there. But you have to be ready. Once this starts, there's no going back. I'm ready, she said. Back to the gala. The event was in full swing now. The band played soft highlife music in the background. Guests laughed and chatted as waiters moved between tables. The stage at the front was decorated with large banners reading, Williams Foundation, for the future of the children. From her spot near the corner, Chioma watched Esther float through the room in a gold gown, smiling at guests and accepting compliments. William stood near the stage, shaking hands with a senator. They looked untouchable. Esther caught sight of Chioma and gestured sharply. You, take these drinks to table 3, she ordered, loud enough for the guests nearby to hear. Yes, ma, Chioma replied, keeping her head low. She carried the tray to the table, served the drinks, and returned to her corner. Her heart was steady, her mind focused. The speeches begin. After the dinner was served, the MC took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our gracious hosts, Mr. and Mrs. William Williams. Applause filled the room. William and Esther walked to the stage hand in hand, smiling as though they were royalty. William took the microphone first. Good evening, friends. We are humbled by your presence tonight. We are here because we believe in a better future for our children. The Williams Foundation has always stood for hope, for education, for opportunity. Chioma almost laughed, but she kept her expression blank. Esther took the microphone next. Every naira you give tonight will go directly to those in need, she said smoothly. We thank you for trusting us with your generosity. The audience clapped again. Some even stood. The moment arrives. Chioma saw her lawyer enter the hall quietly from the side entrance. He gave her a small nod. Behind him, 2 EFCC officers in plain clothes walked in and took positions near the back. Her lawyer mouthed now. Chioma placed her tray on a side table and walked slowly toward the stage. At first, no one paid her any attention. But as she stepped onto the lower steps of the stage, murmurs began to rise. Esther turned, her smile faltering. What are you doing here? She hissed into the microphone, forgetting it was still on. Chioma took the second microphone from the stand. Her voice was calm but carried clearly across the room. My name is Chioma Kalu, she began. The room fell silent. I am not a maid, she continued. I am the daughter of the late Ngozi Kalu, founder of the Kalu Foundation. The same foundation these two have been stealing from for months. Gasps echoed across the hall. Heads turned toward William and Esther. Esther's face went pale. This girl is mad, she shouted. William stepped forward. Security! Remove her! But the EFCC officers were already moving. Chioma held up a folder. I have proof. Bank transfers from my mother's charity to shell companies owned by William Williams. Emails between Esther Williams and their associate about cleaning the ledger before auditors arrive. Millions of naira meant for schools and orphanages, stolen to fund their lifestyle. Gasps turned into angry murmurs. Several guests pulled out their phones, recording. You're lying, William barked, but his voice cracked slightly. Chioma turned to the officers. I've given copies of everything to my lawyer and to the EFCC. One officer stepped forward. Mr. and Mrs. Williams, you are under arrest for financial fraud and embezzlement. Esther's hands trembled as she looked around the room. The cameras from guests' phones caught every movement. This is a setup, she cried. She's jealous. She's. Save it for your statement, the officer interrupted, taking her arm. William tried to push past the second officer, but the man caught him firmly. Sir, please cooperate. The room buzzed with shock. Guests whispered to each other. I can't believe it. All those donations. I thought they were genuine. As the officers led William and Esther toward the exit, Esther's eyes locked on Chioma. There was fury there, but also fear. You'll regret this, she spat. Chioma met her gaze steadily. No, you will. The officers pushed them forward. Outside, camera flashes exploded as reporters who had been tipped off by Chioma's lawyer swarmed the entrance. Inside, the guests turned back to Chioma. Some looked apologetic, some curious, some simply stunned. She didn't wait for questions. She handed the microphone back to the MC and walked off the stage. Her lawyer met her halfway, a small smile on his face. "It's done," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes, it's done. Have you seen the news?" That was the first thing Sunday said as he burst into the boys' quarters the next morning, holding his phone like it was a trophy. Chioma looked up from the small table where she was sorting documents for her lawyer. "What happened?" she asked calmly, though she already knew. Sunday placed the phone in front of her. On the screen was a live news broadcast. The headline at the bottom read, "Williams couple arrested for charity fraud." The video showed William and Esther being led into a black EFCC van, surrounded by reporters shouting questions. William kept his head down. Esther tried to cover her face with her handbag. "They're finished," Sunday said, almost in disbelief. "People are saying they might go to jail for a long time." Chioma watched the footage for a moment, then pushed the phone back gently. "It's not about jail time," she said. "It's about making sure they can never touch another naira meant for the helpless." Sunday blinked at her. "You really brought them down." She gave a small smile. "It wasn't just me." 2 days later, court hearing. The small courtroom buzzed with voices as journalists set up cameras. On one side, William and Esther sat with their lawyer, both looking far less glamorous than they had at the gala. William wore a plain shirt and trousers. Esther's hair was tied back, her makeup minimal. On the other side, Chioma sat with her lawyer, her posture straight. The judge entered, and the room fell silent. The case was called. The EFCC prosecutor began laying out the evidence, bank transfer records, shell company registrations, the emails between the Williamses and their associate Bayo. Esther shifted uncomfortably as the prosecutor read one email aloud. "Make sure the ledger is clean before the auditors come. We can't afford another scare." William whispered something to her, but she didn't respond. When it was Chioma's turn to testify, she walked to the witness stand and spoke clearly into the microphone. "My name is Chioma Kalu, daughter of the late Ngozi Kalu, founder of the Kalu Foundation. I went undercover in the Williams household to gather evidence after we discovered large sums missing from my mother's charity." The courtroom murmured. The judge banged his gavel for silence. Chioma continued, detailing everything she had seen and heard, without exaggeration. "I didn't want revenge," she said. "I wanted the truth, and I wanted the stolen funds returned to the children and communities they were meant for." The sentence. After reviewing the evidence, the judge ruled that the Williamses would remain in custody pending trial and that their assets would be frozen. "This court will ensure that restitution is made to the Kalu Foundation," the judge said. "This kind of theft from the vulnerable is unacceptable." William's face was like stone. Esther's eyes darted around the room, looking for sympathy she wouldn't find. As Chioma left the courthouse, reporters surrounded her. "Miss Kalu, how do you feel about the arrest?" one asked. "Relieved," she said simply. "But the work isn't over." In the weeks that followed, Chioma took over the daily operations of her mother's charity. She replaced corrupt board members, tightened financial controls, and personally visited the projects that had been abandoned during the Williams theft. One bright morning, she stood in front of a newly renovated school in Ondo State. The children, in fresh uniforms, ran across the yard laughing. A group of parents gathered near the gate, thanking her repeatedly. "This was my mother's dream," Chioma told them. "It's my duty to keep it alive." From there, she visited an orphanage in Lagos that had nearly shut down because of missing funds. The building had been repaired, new beds purchased, and food stocked in the pantry. The children swarmed around her, holding her hands, tugging at her dress. She knelt to speak to them, her smile genuine. "No one will ever take what belongs to you again," she promised. A chance meeting. One afternoon, as she left the orphanage, she saw Sunday waiting outside the gate. He had a shy smile on his face. "I came to see how you're doing," he said. "I'm fine," she said warmly. "What about you?" "Still working at the Williams house." He shook his head. "No one works there now. The house is locked. The other staff left. I've been looking for something new. She nodded. If you want, there's a position open at the foundation. We need someone we can trust. His eyes widened. Me? Are you sure? You were the only one who looked out for me when you didn't have to, she said. That's enough for me. The mansion, months later. The Williams Grand Victoria Island mansion was auctioned off as part of asset recovery. The money from the sale went directly into restoring charity projects across the country. Chioma drove past it one evening, her lawyer in the passenger seat. Do you feel any pity for them? He asked. She thought for a moment. No. They knew exactly what they were doing. And they would have done it again if no one stopped them. It was late afternoon. The sun cast a warm golden light over the courtyard. Chioma stood in the middle watching the children play. Laughter filled the air. A little girl ran up to her, holding a handmade card. On it, in careful handwriting, were the words, "Thank you, Auntie Chioma." Chioma knelt and hugged her. "You're welcome," she said softly. She looked around at the smiling faces, the repaired buildings, the full food stores. This was why she had endured the slaps, the insults, the cold nights. Not for revenge. For them. As the children's laughter rang out, she knew one thing for certain. Her mother's legacy was safe again, and no one would ever destroy it while she was alive. She turned toward the gate, ready to keep building, ready to protect every naira, every child, every dream her mother had left behind.